Hi there! On behalf of SINTEF, Mid-Norway Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Greater Trondheim, I would like to welcome you all to this Technoport Innovation Breakfast on batteries and technology. I wish you all could have been here together with me at this lovely location at Nyhavna in Trondheim, but I hope that you are sitting well at home or at your office with a good cup of coffee and ready to spend the next hour together with us. My name is Karianne Tung and I'm the CEO at Technoport. Welcome. The demand for batteries are growing worldwide and across all industries. Norway has clean green power and a lot of process industry, which open great opportunities for us to take a leading role in the development and production of input factors to batteries. And today we ask the question whether battery technology is Norway's new industry for the global market. A lot of people are following us through the screen. We are very thankful for that, and I encourage you all to make questions, comments, or if you want to channel some of the people here, just write in the chat and I'll make sure to bring the questions to our panel. So let's get this show rolling. To give an introduction on today's topic, I would like to give the floor to Nils Røkke, Executive Vice President at Sustainability at SINTEF. Nils, please come here with me. So Nils, what is all this fuss about batteries and why are we talking so much about it?
Because it's so needed. So I'll elaborate a bit on that, and thank you Karianne, and thank you for Technoport arranging this important seminar. And Technoport is an entity which I know from the inception, and I had the pleasure of serving on the board for Technoport for many years. So batteries, what innovation potential is there, and is it a hype? Let's cover the latter first. A hype is characterized by a mismatch of demand and supply, or you could say a lack of content actually. That is not the case for batteries. It is not only nice to have, it is need to have. Need to have because we are in the energy transition towards a net zero emission society in just 30 years. You would almost think that we need a strategy for this. Batteries are not a source of energy, but a storage device of energy. We are using vast amounts of stored energy every day. Just think about all the ships, all the cars, all the trucks, which are powered by stored energy in fossil fuels. But unabated fossil fuels is incompatible with our climate targets. Batteries can provide the stored energy needed for this mobility, to propel mobility, in the future also by hybrid solutions with hydrogen and possibly ammonia. Innovation potential, some context here. Panic broke out in the European car industry, realizing that the future of the car industry is not the internal combustion engine. Only 3% of the battery production is in Europe today. China has 66%. The automotive industry, which employs 13.8 million people in Europe, either directly or indirectly, are turning to batteries. If Europe does not produce batteries, we risk to a very real potential of losing the European automotive industry. So how to secure the supply chain in a highly competitive market, and a market which is expanding? When I acquired my first Tesla in 2014, it was said that 60% of the price was due to the batteries, and that the battery price was around $600 per kilowatt hour. 3 years later, my second Tesla, it was assumed that the battery price was around $300 per kilowatt hour. And that was then in 2017. In 2010, this was around $1,100 per kilowatt hour. This is the same trend as we've seen for solar and PV, solar and wind. Tremendous drops as we see economy of scales kick in. Soon we will see $100 per kilowatt hour. So the EU is forecasting about 200 gigawatt hours per year additions from a status of about 200 gigawatt hours today, actually. In 2030, it is expected that the demand from EU itself will be about 17% of the global demand of 2,000 gigawatt hours, also targeting to become number 2 in the production in the world. So how can Norway ship into these projections? What has Norway to offer? In a recent report from the European Commission, it states that the fastest growing market is actually the marine market. And this is where Europe has a lead. The market could be 800 million euros by 2025. Guess what? This is also where Norway has its competitive edge. Starting early with implementation in fish boats and ferries, greatly helped by policies, incentives and regulations to reduce emissions from the transport sector. Furthermore, Norway can contribute in raw material supply and processing, including graphite, silicon, aluminium, nickel and manganese. And we can supply clean energy to the production of these batteries. Norway also has the highest global ownership for electric vehicles, and hence is an ideal testbed for Europe to tackle issues related to charging infrastructure, to second life and recycling. Add to that the solid contribution and investment in education, research and innovation, and I think we have a fair chance of having a large footprint in this area. Furthermore, we need support schemes for pilot and demonstration and capital to venture into making batteries or parts of the battery supply chain. However, we cannot stay ahead of the curve only being demand driven. We also need to venture into materials, improve new chemistries, and other than lithium ion, and to boost energy density, improve robustness and lifetime, and lower the charging time. Sustainability issues are key, including the raw materials value chain, circularity and responsible production. So, batteries are not the only solution to the energy transition towards climate neutrality, but it's certainly a solid building block. And it is high time that Norway develops its own battery strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Nils Røkke. Then I would like to introduce the panel together with me. So panel, please find your seats. Together with me today, I have Thomas Bjørdal, which is project manager at Renergy, the renewable energy cluster. And Thomas is sitting here to my far right. Then I have Fride Vullum-Bruer, which is senior research scientist at SINTEF. And at least we have Brian Stead, who is the CEO and co-founder of Bryte. So welcome to you all. It's nice to having you here. Let's start to talk about some of the possibilities here. Thomas, Renergy. Renergy is a cluster within renewable energy, and you have more than 90 companies together with you. Why have you organized through a cluster, and what is your aim and goals here?
Well, the cluster has its natural origin from the tech city of Trondheim, and the best way of developing a cluster is that it has a natural growth, and that's the way the cluster started, by the heavy research environments in the city, and also energy companies. Energy companies like the large companies for power generators like Renergy and TE, but also larger energy companies like Siemens, for instance, Powell and so on. But also very important, we have a large number of smaller specialist companies and startups within energy, for example, Bryte here. So it started as a regional cluster, but very soon developed to be more a Norwegian national with clear international ambitions. So now one of our main focus areas now is actually internationalization together with green transport and energy systems. So that's the short version of it.
Yes, yeah. Very nice. And Fride, you are a senior research scientist at SINTEF, and SINTEF is of course a world-leading research institute. Why do you think Norway have come so far when it comes to battery technology, and what has been the milestone for SINTEF in this work?
Right, well, let me just try to rephrase a little bit, because Norway hasn't really come far when it comes to battery technology. Asia is really leading the race there, and I mean, about 96% of the world's battery supply in lithium-ion batteries is produced outside of Europe today. But as also indicated by Nils in the beginning, Norway, we have a lead when it comes to implementation in maritime. A lot of countries are looking to Norway to see how we're doing that. And of course, we are world champions in buying electric vehicles and, and implementing that into our society. And I think that also is a lot of our success and how I think we are able to be such drivers for this and now this battery cell production in Europe. And really a lot of that stems from the government being very ahead of the game and providing incentives, making it very favorable for people to buy EVs and drive EVs. It's become very, the social acceptance for EVs and electrification in general is very high in Norway. We've sort of tackled the hurdle of range anxiety, which many still, I think, struggle with. And of course, we do have a quite well-established charging infrastructure compared to most other countries, and that helps a lot. So, and of course now the fact that we do have a lot of EVs on the road are also providing a lot of other opportunities for us now. Yeah.
Brian, you are the CEO and co-founder of Bryte. And just to let everybody know what Bryte is about, can you kind of give us a taste of your company?
Yeah, Bryte is addressing the challenges that rise from large-scale storage. It's namely high price for batteries, and they're very resource-intensive. So the price for batteries, lithium-ion, they have gone down a lot, but when you start to think of scaling it up for large-scale applications, there are other costs that come along with that, as far as battery management and thermal management. And it actually gets very expensive when you start using lithium-ion. So what we're working with is a technology called flow batteries. And flow batteries are really neat because you can store the energy in liquid or fluid electrolytes. And this then allows you to use other types of materials that, in essence, release or free up lithium-ion and some of the other necessary metals for the battery cells for transport, which I think is really important. So stationary batteries is what we're working with, and we're aiming to change the way that the world stores and shares energy.
How old is your company?
We are approximately 9 months old.
9 months old. Yeah. How has it been?
Really exciting. It was a funny stage in the springtime because I was actually living in Volda, and so I was commuting back and forth, and then COVID came, and so I was kind of stuck in Volda without access to the prototype. But that gave some time to work on the business development, and that part there I think is really important because it's understanding the market and everything around how we're going to actually use these batteries is really necessary for us to go forward.
Yeah. And speaking of going forward, what is your aim and ambition for that pathway?
Yeah, I really want to be known for making the most environmentally friendly battery. If our name can be set on our batteries and people look at it and be like, oh yeah, Bryte, they're making a difference here. They're going to do something big for, or they are doing something big for the way we are using energy. And maybe it's not necessarily just the physical battery that we're going to work with, but more the business model around it. the way people think of the energy they use.
I think that you are a very good example here on how to contribute to the green transition. You kind of taken the torch, I would say. Do you think that Norway has possibilities here, as we started to talk about?
Yeah, definitely. And Nils and the others have referred to the material access. We've got SINTEF, Elcam, or not SINTEF, Elcam and Hydro. They're working with developing materials for battery storage. We've got the research network, SINTEF and NTNU, among others, and the clusters, Renergy, Beacon, Battery Norway, etc. There's a lot of activity that I think is kind of starting to blossom in many ways, and there's a good start, a good energy going here. At the same time, though, I think that there are some challenges that need to be addressed as far as the confidence that we have, given that we are kind of still in this startup. We're way behind as far as cell production, and yeah, I mean, like, what is going to happen when new technologies come? Are we prepared for quickly changing, adapting to those new chemistries or methods?
We will talk a little bit more about the challenges later, but Thomas, now you heard Brian here talked about batteries in order to change the way energy is stored and shared. And Nils, in the beginning, he talked about the maritime sector. Norway is a pioneer here, as Fride said also, in the electrification of marine sector. I believe the first electric ferry came in 2015, Ampere, around that number at least. And the goal for 2030 is that all the 200 ferries will be zero-emission vessels. With the pathway we now see here, do you think that ambition is possible?
Definitely. We are already gone quite far in a few years in the transition on using battery electric technology in, for example, ferries. But now it's also highly integrated in other vessels, like the sea farming industry. Now we have one of the largest shipbuilders for the sea farming industry, the Moen Group here in mid-Norway. Almost every boat they are delivering now is at least battery hybrid with diesel, obviously, because of the range and so on. I think we have an advantage in the maritime industry. We have gone far. The next step is to make the integration between sea and shore smooth or smoother, because we are at an early step. We have some challenges on the ferries, and we have to solve that. And that is a challenge, both technically, but also the whole integration of two systems of transferring energy in a new way, not by just a big tank and a hose. We have electrons now are going to fly efficiently from the net via something on the harbor and into the ship, and that been done very fast, much faster, and with huge amounts of effect on a different level than we see when we're charging a car, because the ship needs the same amount of the same effect of electricity as a few thousand cars, like that. And that is a challenge, a very interesting challenge. So I think that the next possibility, if we're talking about the end market of consumers, I think developing good systems, seashore systems, harbor systems is crucial and a very interesting possibility for Norway now. And that is both, well, as an energy cluster, where we're technology neutral, we're looking at energy storage, and if it is as a gas or liquid, hydrogen or ammonia or some sort of battery technology, that's, well, we pick the best solution. has to be used, and we also have to have solutions working together. So I think there's lots of possibility, and very interesting the startup initiative from Bryte here, which is focusing on exactly that market.
Yeah.
Seashore will be a very interesting market, I think.
Fride, do you agree with Thomas here?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because I wanted to comment on that. Because I think it's quite right, as he's saying, like the more we electrify things, whether it's ships or cars or trucks or construction sites or whatever it is, that electricity needs to come from somewhere. And also that effect issue that you need it fast right now. The grid isn't built to handle this right now. So there's a lot of issues. Right now we have ferries going across the fjords that are enabled to, or to be able to charge, they actually have batteries stationed at each end to be able to charge the ferries fast enough because the local grid can't handle it. I also think we're going to see a lot more into this type of smart systems with smart charging, so that maybe even EVs can provide electricity back to the grid when it's necessary, and also using more, not just batteries, as you say, as energy storage. At SINTEF, we're also looking at other sources, like we look at thermal storage, we look at other types of, working with hydrogen, with ammonia, with other sources. And it's not necessarily lithium-ion batteries that's the solution for everything. And especially when you look into, let's say, integrating batteries in the grid to stabilize the grid, or to handle these, or to do this sort of peak shaving, if you like. I think there's lots of other solutions that will also be important, and I think that's also where a company like Bryte, with the flow battery technology, or even other battery technologies that are being developed, will also be very important in the future, because lithium-ion batteries is not the answer to every solution.
No. I agree on you on that, and we talked about the maritime sector now, but you are also here talking about other sectors, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are there other sectors that Norway can have a leading role here?
I believe so, and one thing, this might be some people may think this is a bit way out still, but we are really looking into electrification also in aviation. And Norway is sort of like an ideal test site for that, because we have Widerøe. Yeah. They have this short distance flights that are really ideal for testing out this all electric flights. And of course, with that, you also have to look at the airports. Because how about charging for these, even though they're small planes, they still require a lot of electricity to charge. So there's lots of challenges in aviation. You see it in also like sort of bigger trucks, trains, electrification is really coming in sort of everywhere in our society, I think, in one way or another.
And especially on the transportation side.
Very much for transportation, yeah.
We actually got some questions from the audience, and I still encourage you guys to write comments or questions in the chat, and I will make sure to bring it to the panel. And this is a question from Anders to all of you. How do flow batteries compare with hydrogen for seasonal storage? It sounds as if this tech is for the long-term rather than short-term storage, so that's actually competing with hydrogen rather than lithium. I think that's the question. Any of you?
Rather than what was
Lithium-ion.
I think I can try to contribute.
You can start, Brian.
Hydrogen is suitable for seasonal storage, and in many ways flow batteries are there as well. However, the economics behind that aren't at this point so feasible, and that has to do with the prices for the membranes, among other things, and the electrolytes. So it's yes, you can use a flow battery for seasonal storage, but we're still the optimal is within a 6 hour range or so, because we want to be able to use our battery for as many services as possible, market and grid services, so that we actually can survive. But the possibilities for us to scale up are quite large, and it's for us just a matter of increasing the amount of electrolyte we have in our system, and it could quite possibly allow us to store seasonally eventually and compete with hydrogen.
Any other comments here? We have kind of not the same question, but something similar from Jan Rikard Sagli. How fast does development of batteries based on other materials here have to happen to avoid resource limitations in battery production? Anyone feel?
Yeah, I can. To be honest, even with the speed that batteries, lithium-ion batteries are being developed now, or the production is being developed, there's plenty of resources. And also because they're discovering new sources continuously, and also because we are becoming more and more conscious about recycling. And I believe today the new EU battery directive is being published, which also will say something about how much from a battery needs to be recycled. Today, it's only required to recycle about 50% of a lithium-ion battery, but this number is going to increase quite significantly. So once we get, and recycling, unfortunately, has been an area where it's suffered because there's been so much focus on developing the lithium-ion batteries rather than looking into the recycling issue. So that technology is kind of lagging far behind. But I think in the next few years, we're going to see a revolution there, where we see that it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be much more efficient to recycle materials, so that that way we're going to be able to reuse the materials to a much greater extent than what we are currently doing. So from most of the reports and the numbers that I've seen, running low on resources is not our biggest issue for quite a long time. But of course, that's not going to stop us in developing new technologies and new chemistries. And we see new chemistries like the solid-state batteries, the lithium-sulfur batteries, and other technologies that are sort of on the verge of making it into larger scale. So in a few years, I think we're going to see quite a few other chemistries also being introduced.
I think the recycling question is the topic is rather exciting. It was something I was wanting to mention when you're asking about the potential in Norway. My impression is that there is a lot of focus on the battery development, but what are we going to do with all these cells when they're finished, right? I mean, the EVs are fairly new. 3, 5, 7 years from now, we're going to have this huge pile of batteries, and when it's, my understanding now, costs 6 to 10 times more energy to recycle these batteries compared to just mining or producing new materials. Well, let's just make a big pile, throw them in the ocean like we've done with other stuff before.
Well, hopefully not.
Hopefully not. What is the plan? What's happening in Norway or otherwise in Europe?
Can I make one quick comment there as well? Because I think also the fact that Norway is such a first mover in the EV uptake, the fact that we have so many EVs on the road, it makes us, it puts us in a very unique position to be able to utilize those batteries in a way. And one thing is developing recycling technologies, but also, and this is something that I think probably a lot of people don't know, but when an EV battery is considered sort of spent or at the end of its life, it still has about 70 to 80% left of its initial capacity. But it's no longer considered suitable for cars.
No, for that reason.
Exactly. What should we then just throw away these batteries? I say no.
I think a lot of people agree with you.
And this opens up for a really new market segment of taking these used batteries and putting them to use in other applications, especially into stationary storage or for other areas that don't have the same requirements as for an EV. And that really puts us in a special position to take a lead in that development.
Do you think that is also because of the mindset we are starting to get about sustainability? That the awareness of this is higher now than before?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's important.
I think some of the social aspects too have been brought forward as well. I mean, there's a fairly big push to get away from cobalt, and maybe don't need to go into detail with that. But are we just going to end up pushing our waste to somebody else, somebody else's problem to deal with? No, I think we need to address this. We need to tackle this problem.
I think now we talked a little bit about the possibilities here, and as I understand, we are Norway and Trøndelag, of course, as well, are having a position here. We are good on implementation. What are and that's also one of the questions here from Morten Øyen, what incentives are lacking for reaching the high ambitions for the battery industry in our country? Because we are good at something, and we are doing a lot of research, companies are starting to come in, but what kind of incentives do we need to scale up this industry for taking the actual leading role that we really want to have in the global markets? Thomas, I give the challenge to you.
No, I'm not. I think it's important to take a look at the whole value chain and consider the different parts of the value chain of batteries. And at this stage, prioritate what parts of that value chain would escalate the battery industry in Norway, and put the incentives in that part of it. I think many would point on the cell factory part of it, cell assembling, battery factories. We need to build them in Norway quite soon to get that started. Not only nice PowerPoints and big plans, but actually start to build something and produce something. That is something I would stress. But we also have at obviously the end user consumer part of it. We need a market. And we have a lot of incentives for low emission and so on both maritime and land transport. But I think we need to be a bit harder on the both on incentives and demands to transport by demanding zero emission on vessels and cars that has or land transport. That is at the moment difficult to do, but just demand it, not low emission, because that's not difficult. To develop further the home market, it's also one part of it. So that part of the value chain is quite important, I think.
Yeah. Fride?
Yeah, I think it's. I agree with you there, but I also think that if this industry is really going to bloom in Norway, we need to also take this opportunity now to build up on the cell production and be a part. I mean, this is something that Europe is focusing on quite a lot, and it's we see now 3 big initiatives in Norway with Freyr, with Beyonder, and with Morrow. And I really hope that they will all be successful, because this is an industry that we need, and it's an industry that can create lots of revenue for Norway and create lots of new workplaces and bring in it could potentially be our next new big industry, I think. But also, in order to be able to have this industry, we also need materials. And this is, as Nils also pointed out in his introduction, we have a lot of materials in Norway and in the Nordic countries. And we do have now Elkem producing graphite. They're building their new graphite plant. There's Skaland Graphite up in the north that have their natural graphite. We have Hydro with their aluminium. We have Nikkelverket, which produce nickel and cobalt. I mean, we do have a lot of materials available locally. And but I think a lot of building up, there's a lot of economy of scale here. And in order to be successful, you have to think big. But that is very costly. But it's still also high risk investments. Having access to high risk investments, I think it's the key. People and companies that are willing to invest in this and believing in it. But we also see some challenges in Norway with regards to regulations. And this is a market that moves so quickly. And if we really want to be able to take a part of this now, we have to act now. We can't act in 2 years or in 5 years, then it'll be too late. So the battery train is leaving the station now. If you want to be on it, we got to be on it now. So this whole time issue is very important. So if we could have some sort of fast tracking of getting permits and you know, in the whole sort of building up this business, I think that would make a big difference.
You kind of answered to my next question here, because I wanted to challenge you on the politics here.
Sorry.
Like, no, and I think you had a lot of challenges kind of back to the politics, because Nils mentioned also in the introduction that there's a need for a battery strategy as a whole. I think maybe politics has done some on the demand side, like people are buying electric cars, have been now in Norway for many, many years. And I think that's maybe, or at least some of the reasons are due to politics. But are the politics doing enough? That was my question. And if I should kind of, I hear what you say and you are saying maybe not. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, they're kind of waking up. I just hope they're not waking up too late. So there's still time, but I would really like to see more action in that area.
I think we have to look a bit historically on this, because we built our modern community on power demanding industry. Several decades before we were so lucky that we found oil out here. And we were able to do that. That was high investment and heavy solutions to do that. And if we shall take the next leap on battery, we have to do the same. We just can't put on some incentives on vessels or cars and so on. That's the end market, the end users, and the battery technology used in those cars are being developed and assembled in other countries or at the car factories. So we have to be a bit brave, and I don't think we need a strategy. We need a roadmap or decisions to just get to that point immediately. To point out and say, we will start up factories and they will be put in these areas, because they are the best areas. They have like a harbor, they have enough electricity available, enough areas, and so on and so on.
Just do it. That's what you, Brian, say.
Yeah, just get it done. And make the moves, and you know, if we have the resources available, and the timing is now. Let's just get those factories built and make decisions quickly, adapt our politics, and maybe move our subsidies to this market, because you know, we have to grasp this while it's a low-hanging fruit.
So to all the politicians out there, the battery train is leaving, so make sure you just jump on it and just do it. We have a question here from Mats Løkelandstad, which is kind of political, so I want to ask you this one. Eramet demands that materials for batteries from mines using deep-sea tailings disposal should be banned, and the Finnish company Terrafame has a similar opinion. How would this influence Norwegian battery initiatives, as Norway is one of the few countries allowing such tailings disposals? Anyone want to take the challenge? Thomas, or?
I could comment more generally that of course it has to be very important to have a full life cycle view on battery production and the whole value chain, of course, and I think it's impossible to do this without looking at issues like that. It's more general answer.
I don't think I have any sort of additional comments to that either, but it's no, it's of course it's important, and looking at the whole life cycle is important, because it's lithium-ion batteries in particular are known for it's a very energy demanding process to produce these batteries, and unfortunately there's been quite high CO2 emissions connected to the production, and a lot of it comes from the raw materials side and the mining. So so there's obviously a lot of improvements that can be made in that area.
I can see that people here are thinking about recycling, and also we have been talking a little bit about this, but one of the question is also what is the industry's position on designing batteries in a way that will make them easier to disassemble, remanufacture and repurpose? Like where's the industry's position in this question? You have any?
Yeah, I mean it's something that hasn't been a focus until quite recently, but it's both in terms of research now and in terms of the industrial actors. I think this is becoming more and more a focus area, because also the companies that produce the batteries like Siemens and Corvus in Norway, they actually have they have to look at and see, yeah, we can design this battery, but how easy is this battery to take apart afterwards? So that's something that they that's becoming more and more focused on also in battery production, because right now the whole disassembly process is too time-consuming and too expensive, really. So it needs to be automated to a much greater extent.
Yeah. We have been talking now a little bit about both possibilities and challenges, and I particularly want to ask you, Brian, on the challenges, but that is regarding starting a company in this the technology is developing very fast, and you take the risk and you take the chance and you start Bryte. Can you take us through some of the challenges you have met and think you are going to meet in the future?
Yeah. Right now, the biggest challenge I think that we are working with, or we're trying to work through, is balancing the business development part and the product development. They're both very time-consuming and resource-intensive processes. And as far as the business developments, there are the policies that are in place that are going to take time to develop and be implemented for us to deliver or for our potential customers to use batteries in the grid. A net company or a grid company can, in Norway, they can own a battery, but they're very limited to what they can do with it. And their use for that can actually be much better if some of the policies are relaxed. And then as far as the product development, it's a very resource or capital intensive thing we're trying to do here. And if we want to store large amounts of energy, we need pieces of infrastructure, large pieces of infrastructure. We need the competence. We need the finances to make it happen. And my ideal world, I want to bootstrap this whole thing, but I don't think that's realistic to do. And so having backing of investors that are willing to take the risk and understand that we are a young company, but and that needs a lot of money to make this happen. It takes its time to figure all that out and find the balance, and then in the future, when we've gotten this up and running, it's being able to adapt and navigate the market here. Are we going to assist in making our energy distribution storage easier, or are we a hindrance? Are we really going to make the change we want to? And I don't know. And it's that the possibilities for us are huge, and trying to figure out where to target first is not that easy.
No. But maybe a question a little bit on the side, but sometimes I would say that investors are the first one to go in a direction if they see the possibility. Like now, more and more people and investors, of course, are going in the direction of sustainability. And then I, in my head, think that they also would like to look into your company. Do you get the investors you need? Are they here from the region? Are they international? What does it look like?
Yeah, we as a company are still young. So as far as like the investor run that we're aiming for, we're going to be targeting more specifically investors in the end of January, February. But my impression so far is that regionally there's a lot of interest, but there's still that little bit of hesitancy. Yeah. And I don't know if that's a Norwegian cultural or societal thing where it's nice thing you're doing there, but
I don't want to use my money on you.
Yeah. Or if it's just general human thinking that this is risky. I've spent a lot of time or worked a lot hard to try to build up my own fortune here. I don't want to just throw it away on some Canadian dude that comes in and thinks he can change the world.
Well,
I don't know, but I'm taking a risk myself, using my time on this, and maybe I'm a little ideal, but I think we can make this happen, and I hope that there are people that can join and be a part of what we're trying to work to create, and I'm excited to see what happens with that.
As I said earlier, I believe you are kind of a torch in this area and going maybe a few steps ahead others. And I believe that's also sometimes the role of a startup company, to push the borders for existing companies and like using the mode of competition to get other bigger companies and industries taking the step behind. And also there's you are doing your thing in Bryte, and I encourage all the investors out there to have your eyes open for this wonderful company. But we have the big existing industries as well, which I think have to restructure some of their fundament for taking the green shift that we need. And one of the questions here as well is, what are your recommendations when it comes to companies like, for example, Equinor, Hydro, Panasonic, when exploring the potential for a European battery business? Because we always will have the good guys like Brian, but what do we do with the big ones? Frida?
Right. Well, I mean, we know for sure that all of the companies that you now mentioned are very interested in this green shift, and they're doing quite a lot. And we shouldn't forget that the oil industry, that many people say, oh, we need to stop taking out the oil, but they are really financing a lot of this green shift. because they're putting a lot of money into this. They're investing in companies like Corvus, they're investing in Northvolt in Sweden. Now Hydro has teamed up with Northvolt to build a recycling plant in Fredrikstad. They're also into second life of batteries, and there's a lot, we do see a lot of change in these areas, and they're really, but of course, for them as well, this is high risk. And of course, we have to understand that they also need to make money. So that's for them as well. And now we also see Elkem that are building their graphite plant down at Herøya. So there's a lot of things happening, and these big established companies, they are taking a part in this, and we see sort of a change, and I think especially Equinor and Hydro now that have teamed up with Panasonic to evaluate battery production. That's quite exciting when big giants like that go into that sort of collaboration. I think that really means something. It's just not something they do on a whim. Yeah.
We are getting close to the end here. Maybe I want to challenge you, like giving a very short summary of kind of the discussion we have now. I start with you, Thomas, so you don't get the time to think about it. But the big question is, can Norway play an important role making a new industry in the global market? Is it a yes or no question, or can we do this?
Definitely. We have some advantages. We have mentioned the process industry already at that end of the start of the value chain, and we have the research environments institutes on this, highly international competent institutes on hydrogen, and we already have assembling and integration companies like Siemens. You know, a German company like Siemens, they put their assembling and integration factory in Trondheim. They didn't do that by coincidence. They don't do things by coincidence, I think. And you have Corvus in Bergen and so on. So I think that the key issue is to still sort of build a stronger on the parts of the value chain that we are actually quite heavy on. Those I've just mentioned, and as we were talking about, the cell production factory is the key here. I think if we start that, if we tomorrow had started to build it, for example, the factory in Mo i Rana, then that would mean a lot. Yep. And I think, well, we point at the companies. I think the energy companies mentioned here also, the Equinor Hydro initiative now as the latest one, tells us that the companies are quite ready to make that move. And now we need good and lean processes for getting the regulations ready, the area ready. Just so we need like counties and those communities where a factory is natural, has to step up a bit.
Fride, I heard Thomas' answer to my question was yes. We can do this. We just need something. Yeah.
Yeah, I also believe. I think we can, and we must. And I think this, I agree with everything that you've said. And I think in addition, something that I think may be important for us is that we also need to look at both the other Nordic countries and also the rest of Europe to see, not just because here we're really competing against Asia. We need to be self-sufficient in Europe. And in order to manage that, I think we need to collaborate. So looking at, let's say, a Nordic collaboration platform within batteries, I think would be very valuable. But also even towards Europe, and SINTEF has been working within many of the European collaboration platforms for many, many years. And we see that there's really great value in that. And we also try to sort of be a voice for other Norwegian stakeholders into this EU network and open up for possibilities there. So that's, I think that's going to be also an important factor. But the last thing I think that I really want to stress that I also mentioned earlier today is the element of time. It's really essential that we move fast enough.
It's now or never.
It's really now or never. Yeah. If we lose this opportunity, it's not going to come again. It's simple as that. Yeah.
Brian, you're going to be a part of this adventure. You ready?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we aren't keeping all our eggs in the one nest, or whatever the saying is.
Maybe.
Basket. That there isn't one solution to energy storage, and it's a very broad subject. So if we can make sure that we're addressing different areas within this segment, and making sure that we are the ones sitting with the competence at the end of the day, and the systems in place so that we can both make things happen, get it done, but also make sure that we can clean up after ourselves, so that we're not just pushing this problem, or not solving one problem and then create another problem that we have to deal with. We need to make sure that every part of this is well thought out, but also just do it.
Just do it. Well, dear panelists, attendees, and viewers, we are out of time. A special thanks to all of our guests here in the studio, this lovely location, and also to our partners who have hosted us here. I also want to thank Next Hero for doing the stream. Technoport will be back in 2021 with a new innovation breakfast. And if you are curious about Technoport or maybe want to apply for membership, please do not hesitate to contact us. So on behalf of SINTEF, the Mid-Norway Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Greater Trondheim, I would like to say thank you for spending time with us today. Take care, be safe, and Merry Christmas. So, goodbye.